Purim, and that was kind of different. But you can see that there's, the wine and all that. Anybody know why the fish are there? Can you guess? It's not a Jewish reason. The fish are there on the right and the left. You see the fish? It's because, it says it actually in Hebrew, Mazal Dagim, that it's the horoscope for Pisces. Now, ancient Jews did believe in the horoscope, and you find it depicted on the floor of ancient synagogues. There are a lot of other symbols there too. There's a representation in the upper left-hand corner of the tradition of matanot la'evyonim, gifts for the poor. And also on the right side, we send each other Purim food gifts. And the various characters from the story of Esther are there as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. Today is actually a special Shabbat called Shabbat Zachor. It's when there's a supplemental Torah portion read in traditional and I guess you call them conventional synagogues that reminds us of the tribe of Amalek, which was apparently just hell-bent on killing the Jews all the time. I know we can't imagine that such a thing would exist in the world. But that's why it says in the Torah, in this portion, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek al tishkach. Remember what Amalek did to you when you were wandering in the wilderness. Don't forget. And then it says to blot out his name, or its name. Purim's connection is that Haman is said to have been an Agagite who was a relation to the Amalekites. And so that was the explanation in that story. Anyway, I'll be talking more about Esther in a few moments, but we are going to turn the slide now and start with our service. Our readers tonight is Mark Lipson here? Okay, so not Mark Lipson. Saul Foreman, Helen Foreman, Lonnie Fleischer, and Mary Monahan. And we'll begin with this reading. Welcome, Bruchim Aba'in, and Shabbat Shalom. We gather on this Shabbat as a community of believers. We believe that Judaism is the entire experience of the Jewish people. We believe in the value of celebrating Jewish culture and identity. We believe that all those who choose to celebrate with us are part of our community. We believe that being together strengthens and enhances our Jewish experience. This is a time of transition. We move from our everyday week to the experience of Shabbat. May this Shabbat be a time of peace and rejuvenation. We turn from the concerns of the outside world and become quiet and peaceful as we create a community of humanistic Jewish believers. Let us pause and appreciate our celebration of Shabbat. As we now light our candles, I invite Carol Goldsmith and Rabbi Miriam Jairus to kindle our lights. I said Carol Goldsmith and Rabbi Miriam Jairus. Achad Ha'am wrote, "A Jew who feels a real tie with the life of his people throughout the generations will find it utterly impossible to think of the existence of the Jew without Shabbat. One can say without exaggeration that more than the Jew, on Shabbat we celebrate the gift of life and possibility. On Shabbat we rejoice in our traditions. On Shabbat, we draw renewed sustenance from the love of family and friends. On Shabbat, we affirm the gifts of community." Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShalom, Shomrei Shalom. Still me. As long as I'm standing here, just a reminder, please, especially tonight, don't touch the microphone. I wrote this a long time ago, actually, and I've rewritten it a few times. It was based on my favorite psalm in the Bible, the 104th Psalm, for humanists. We peer at the sky, seeing it spread like a tent cloth. Below it, the clouds, chariot-like, move on the wings of the wind. On the horizon, we see mountains ascendant, valleys submerged, that once covered the earth as a garment, now receded. Springs rush forth in torrents flowing between the hills, giving drink to all the wild beasts. Above them, the birds sing among branches. The earth now sated, grass grows for grazing. The humans work the land, fermenting wines that gladden their hearts and coaxing forth bread from the earth. As the moon and the sun mark our days and our nights, circadian rhythms bring forth the beasts of the forests who at night seek their prey, returning to their places of rest with the rising of the sun as the humans once again begin their day. The sea, too, vast and wide, contains its creatures beyond number. Surely countless are its living things, great and small. Ma rabu olamenu, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyaneha. How many are the marvels found on this world? How full is the earth with life?
Lecha dodi likrat kala, bnei Shabbat nekavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, bnei Shabbat nekavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, bnei Shabbat nekavla. Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavla. Likrat Shabbat lichu v'necha, ki et abracha hi mevia, b'simcha b'rina v'avusto ola, b'nei Shabbat kavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavla.
Hello. The psalmist wrote, "Live with integrity, do what is right, and speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others, and do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who live with respect. Endeavor to keep a promise once made, even though it may be difficult for you. Do not use money or power to abuse others. Make these deeds your own, and you will be an exemplar throughout your days."
Al shlosha devarim, shlosha devarim, haolam kayam. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, haolam kayam.
Shall we ask, by what commandments should we live? Or might we better ask each of ourselves, what kind of person should I be? The first question assumes that there is one right answer. The second assumes that there are many right answers. If we ask how to answer the second question, we are answered in yet other questions. What should you do when you see another suffering, or in need, or afraid, or hungry? What causes are worthy? What world do you dream of where your child plays safely in the street? There are many such questions, some already their own answer, some unanswerable. But when all the answers to all the questions are summed together, no one hears less than this. Love well, seek the good in all things, harm no others, think for yourself, take responsibility, respect nature, do your utmost, be informed, be kind, be courageous, and least sincerely try. Add to these 10 injunctions this: let us always be true to ourselves and to the best in things, so that we can always be true to one another.
Amar Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Ze klal gadol gadol b'Torah. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Ze klal gadol gadol b'Torah. Amar Rabbi Akiva.
Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. Let these be the ideas that we inscribe in our innermost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that coming generations shall learn to revere and celebrate life.
Ori, ori bi, eifo tikvati, tikvati bi, eifo kochi, kochi bi, vegambak, vegambak, eifo kochi, kochi bi, vegambak, vegambak. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and
Shabbat shalom, all. Whoops, gotta get it. Wild peace, not the peace of a ceasefire, not even the vision of the wolf and the lamb. What?
Keep going.
Look at that, good? Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Ask them.
That's fine. Go ahead, please read.
Okay, is that good?
Don't touch.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna be near the microphone. Wild peace, not the peace of a ceasefire, not even the wisdom of the wolf and the lamb, but rather as in the heart when the excitement is over, and you can talk only about a great weariness. I know that I know how to kill, and that makes me an adult. And my son plays with a toy rifle that knows how to open and close its eyes and say, Mama, peace, without the big noise of beating swords into plowshares, without words, without the thud of a heavy rubber stamp. Let it be light, floating like hazy white foam, a little rest for the wounds. It need not be long, and the howl of the orphans is passed from generation to generation, as in a relay race. The baton never falls. Let it come like wildflowers, suddenly, because the field must have it. Wild peace.
Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom, shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'akol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom, shalom.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight our well wishes are extended to these members of our community, Lee Bricker and Jim Walker, along with anyone whom you're thinking about tonight as we go around the room. Please feel free to share their names. Mark? Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Esther? Thank you.
All those who suffer because of withdrawal of American aid.
May all who suffer know that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, a refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. Today is the 519th day of captivity. It is believed there are around, I want to say, 30 some odd hostages that are still alive, or maybe that's the number that are not. It's hard to keep up. It's the 75th Shabbat, in any case, for those who remain in Gaza. This is our hope, that may those who continue to endure this horrible captivity find the courage to carry on. That may those who love them not despair of their return. That they soon return, emerging from their confinement whole in body and in spirit, to know once again the embrace of loved ones.
Makom hakoat betocheinu, makorot habracha mechavrotenu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us
find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Shalom. Mekom hakoach v'tocheinu, mekorot habraka mivroteinu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Shalom.
We are but sojourners in existence. Great and small, celestial bodies and humans are born, live, and die. The universal decree that every journey in existence must end cannot be stayed. May our earthly sojourn bring us the wisdom to accept this common destiny with tranquility and peace. Thus will we find in the recesses of our being strength and consolation when the pilgrimage of a dear one is ended and a link is broken in the chain of love and friendship that binds us together. Every being walks in the valley of the shadow of death, yet even on days of darkness, we can find the path that leads us back to life.
Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. As we recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Our congregation continues to mourn in these 30 days the death of a beloved congregant who is no longer in town with us, Alan Becker. As tonight we also observe the yahrzeits of the following beloved members of our congregation and their loved ones: of Samuel Bieber, Rose Berger, Shelley Blum, Mark Bonet, Joseph Brown, Elizabeth Freeman, Larry Hirsch, Ghazala Jamil, Barbara Kirby, Joseph Crone, Louis Levin, Edward Levy, Greta Lipson, David Mello, Aaron Robfogel, David Remnick, Pauline Robb, Ethel Shore, Ray I. Solomon, Ida Tepley, Lena Weinstock, and Wilfred Williams. If there's someone whom you're thinking about, whose name you'd like to add this list of those who have gone before us, please feel free. We'll start on this side. Anybody? Esther?
3 all my sisters who died in the labor camp in Poland.
Thank you. Brianna? We miss him very much. Anybody on this side of the room? Yes. Gail? Ann? Did we miss anyone at all? We say, Yehi Zichram Livracha, may memories of them provide a blessing. May they also console us and provide us with some comfort as we face this life in their absence. Last week we started a new rule. When I'm done speaking, we don't applaud. If you want to say it was a nice job, you say, Yesher Koach. Oh, I forgot all about this because it's not in my thing. Please rise. We'll say Kaddish. Then I'll tell you about the clapping and stuff. I'm so sorry. Every week I get a book that's missing a page. Usually it's my fault. This week it was not. You'd think I'd memorize it by now. But you don't go on autopilot when you do these things. But you know what? I'll say a word about it as long as I'm talking. You know, Kaddish traditionally is a praise of God. This is a praise of life. So I had the opportunity to say that, and we'll recite it together. Nitgadal v'nitkadash beruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort the house of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Please be seated. I think my muscle memory would help me remember these things. Well, it was in your face, so you saw it. Anyway, what did I teach you? What's the Hebrew if you think somebody did a good job speaking or doing something? Who remembers? You say, Yesher Koach. I don't care if you say anything at all, but stop clapping. Okay, I mean, we're going to make that a new tradition. If there's a guest here, that's one thing. It's very dissonant to me in a synagogue. So that's my new thing. I got a lot of new things going on. Some of you may have noticed. Huh? You like, next week there will be a kippah, and the following week a talis. Tefillin not on Shabbos. What are you talking about, Jews? Never on Shabbos. So we can laugh, it's Purim. And remember, we learned, Misha Nichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, when Adar comes in, we increase our joy. We need a little joy right now. Tonight, in anticipation of Purim, the story is, of course, admittedly about a fictional hero, Queen Esther. I want to talk about what for Jewish readers over the millennia has been considered a major theme of this book that's named after her. It's the theme of Jewish pride. So a little bit of personal revelations. When I first signed on to this humanistic Judaism thing, I struggled without a handle a number of common Jewish attitudes. And one of these was the idea of Jewish pride. I admit I downplayed the idea a little bit. Now, nobody asked me to do this. It's not part of the humanistic Jewish program. It's not part of our teachings. And I never regarded this discomfort as some kind of rejection of my Jewish identity. Certainly, my Jewish identity has been central to my entire life. But the reason for it was related to a certain enthusiasm I had as a new, if you will, convert to humanistic Judaism and its universal messages that are enshrined in humanism. And it seemed right at the time of what we then thought was diminishing and perhaps even disappearing anti-Semitism, a time when ethnic pride somehow felt wrong, perhaps a little arrogant, a good idea for me at any rate. But as I've come to realize about many things over the last few years, I was looking at it the wrong way. If you want to know all the other things I think I was looking at the wrong way, please set up some coffee with me and you'll hear about them for a long time. During these past few years of rising anti-Semitism, I began to understand that Jewish pride is not necessarily an act of hubris. It is an act of being, of standing up, of declaring one's identification with the Jewish people openly and unapologetically. To borrow an idea from the gay community, Jewish pride is about being out and proud, not for the sake of being self-congratulatory, but for the purpose of living with self-esteem and dignity. This rise in anti-Semitism, and it's all around us, but particularly it was the rise among so many in the so-called progressive community, because I shared a common vision of social justice and equality with them, reminded me in a strikingly painful way of the importance of Jewish pride, leading me to claim it with the same sense of purpose that I felt when I embraced it as a gay person. Living proudly need not mean excluding others. It means refusing to erase ourselves. Those who celebrate gay pride, and I've heard this, Arthur and I have heard this many times, frequently, well, we invite retorts along the lines of, what the hell are you so proud of? But of course, that completely misses the point. The concept of gay pride was created to lift people out of gay shame, out of gay fear. And it works. Yet today, in a completely unexpected, for me anyway, reversal, I find that the shame and fear I once associated with being gay are now being cast upon me as a Jew. In this moment, the threats to Jewish safety feel, at least to me, more urgent than those I have faced as a gay person. One of the most helpful aspects of pride is that it provides us with role models, courageous people who have shown us what it means to stand firm in the face of a world that often seeks to diminish us. Every community needs this. The LGBT community has its Harvey Milks, its Larry Kramers, its Billie Jean Kings, and so many more. People who are well known for being out and proudly who they are. Well, needless to say then, the Jewish people, well, we have some role models too. Ours are by the scores because we've been around quite a while. And for thousands of years, our people has had its sages, its thinkers, its leaders, its revolutionaries, figures who shaped our destiny, who embodied the principle that we can be proudly Jewish, and who, by engaging with the world, without turning our backs on it, proudly contributed not only to our people, but to the best of who we all are as humans. So tonight, in honor of the upcoming holiday this week, a holiday that celebrates Jewish pride and Jewish courage, I want to share just a few short vignettes, brief glimpses into the lives of 9 figures, 2 of them admittedly fictional, though what they portray says something about the writers of their lives, all of them legendary, or on their way to being so, who demonstrated Jewish pride in ways that speak strongly to us today. And as I begin, who better to set the stage than Esther herself? So these are our 9 figures. She's in the upper left-hand corner. Queen Esther, a story we're celebrating this week, is one of the most famous Jews to never exist. Sometimes remembered, though, in this literature, or as described rather as the passive queen who won the heart of the king of Persia, only to be guided essentially by her wiser, older cousin Mordecai. But such a simplified summary ignores the rest of the story. It's the part we tend to emphasize today with the children. In the book that's named for her, the most powerful part of the story occurs when Esther undergoes her radical transformation, when she steps into her own power. As I hope you remember, throughout most of the narrative, Esther keeps her identity a secret. In this way, she is representing a reality of the 4th or 5th century BCE authors and what they'd experienced themselves. Assimilating Jew, living in an increasingly assimilating Persia. That is, until in the book at least, Haman's decree threatens the Jewish population. It is then that Mordecai urges her to act with this warning. He says, "Do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life in the king's palace." In the aftermath of October 7th, 2023, and the increasing violence and hostility hurled at Jews all over the world, that warning has come to life for us. Esther does act. With breathtaking courage, she risks her life by revealing her identity, knowing full well that this could lead to her execution. She does it anyway. She owns who she is, and in so doing, she saves her people. This week, when I recounted the story of the book of Esther to the children in Spinoza, I asked them to give me the line. It's not in the book of Esther per se, but it's in the puppet show that I did and all of the Purim spiels that we've seen, that Esther recites, proclaims when she's at the banquet to explain to the king why it is she thinks Haman wants to kill her. And she says in that version, "Because I am a Jew." And do you know every child in that room said it without prompting? That's some Jewish pride. Jewish pride is about that moment when she refused to remain hidden, that willingness to say, I am a Jew, and these are my people, even when, as it does increasingly today, carry a risk. On that note, I want to turn to the other heroes I'm speaking about tonight. Long before Esther, there was Deborah, the prophet and warrior judge. The book of Judges, which more than a few biblical scholars, by the way, believe contains descriptions of plausible historical events that took place during the 12th century BCE, when the people of Israel, whom we know existed at that time, lacked unity and centralized leadership. Well, Deborah, as the story goes, stepped into this instability. She is the greatest heroine, I should say, the greatest woman hero that we have in our Bible. Something significant in and of itself, regardless of whether she lived or not. She's depicted as both a spiritual and military leader. She inspires the army of Israel to their victory against the Canaanites, and is remembered for her boldness, for her ability to inspire a hesitant commander, a man named Barak, to lead the troops, assuring him that there would be victory. She did not wait for anyone's permission to lead. She led. Deborah's story reminds us that Jewish pride is about standing up when no one expects us to, about serving our people not just when it's easy, but also when it's difficult, but necessary. We move on to a more verifiably historical personage, although I don't think it's the middle one on the top or the first brown one on the top. I don't think that's really him. But I'm speaking, of course, of Yochanan ben Zakkai, the rabbi whose heroism is valorized, perhaps by exaggeration, but provides an enormous lesson in Jewish pride. He lived in Jerusalem in the year 70 CE, when the Romans were besieging the city. A realist, he knew that the city was doomed. Knowing this, he chose to oppose the zealots among his own people, who were suicidally battling the Romans into their own oblivion. And he took a different approach, one that he knew was necessary if there were to be Jews. He had himself smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin. And once free, he sought an audience with the Roman commander, Vespasian. There's a wonderful legend about it that I don't have time to share with you, but you could Google it, Vespasian. His request was not, at this time, for the city to be spared. He knew it was long past that, a fait accompli. Instead, he asked for the small town of Yavne, not too far from Tel Aviv, to be given to him and to the other Jewish scholars as a place of refuge. In doing so, he ensured that Judaism would survive beyond the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And it was, to put it mildly, one of the most brilliant and consequential acts of Jewish history. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Jewish people would not have lived very long without Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's wise leadership. His decision to preserve Jewish scholarship in the shadow of destruction reminds us that Jewish pride is also about knowing when to fight and when to build, when to resist, and when to ensure survival by thinking ahead. This brings us to Rabbi Akiva. We sang a song based on something he said tonight. He lived from roughly 50 to 135 CE, so born 20 years before the destruction of the temple. But he was not at that time active in Jewish leadership, nor was he one of the council of sages that Yochanan ben Zakkai brought to Yavne. He was an illiterate shepherd, and he was so until he was the age of 40, when in a moment of Jewish awakening, he decided, by the way, with great encouragement from his wife, to begin his studies. And he went on, of course, to become one of the greatest Talmudic sages. His teachings reshaped Jewish thought. A long life for those times. He was in his 80s at the time. But those last years were marked by tragedy when he decided to support a revolt. Now, 65 years later, after the destruction of the temple, led by a man named Bar Kokhba. It was doomed to failure, just as much as the first revolt had been. But it was a last-ditch effort to restore Jewish sovereignty. And in that sense, many people consider it to have been a dignified effort. When that rebellion failed, Akiva, along with all the other scholars and sages living in Israel at the time, was arrested by the Romans and brutally executed. Yet, and there are many attestations to this, and we believe it to be true, he died reciting the Shema. And in this way, he embraced his Jewish identity, even in death. Rabbi Akiva's decision to begin his Jewish learning at the age of 40 reminds us that Jewish pride is about perseverance and about finding our Jewish purpose at any stage in life. And even his tragic death serves as a reminder that being proud, Jewish pride, can also be about never relinquishing who we are, no matter what price we're paying. We move ahead now several centuries to the 10th century as we briefly recall Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, also known by the Hebrew acronym for his name, Rambam, and the Greek equivalent, Maimonides, a man so famous we have 3 names for him. Born in Spain, Maimonides and his family were forced to flee growing persecution there, eventually settling in Egypt. There he famously became the personal physician to the Sultan, even as he continued writing some of the most influential works in Jewish history. Though more revered by the pious for a book he wrote about the Jewish laws, he would be better recalled for his philosophical work, The Guide for the Perplexed. It was a radical integration of Jewish thought with what was then a reviving Greek philosophy, considered at the time the reigning rational scientific approach to our world. His work challenged traditionalists and skeptics alike, as he dared to think in ways that were new and unsettling, even as he navigated the complexities of exile and persecution, and continued to advise grateful Jewish communities around the world who wrote letters to him seeking his guidance. Maimonides' life and work reminds us that Jewish pride can also be about intellectual bravery, about daring to build a future, even in the face of adversity. Not all of our heroes are brilliant rabbis. Some of them are just regular, brilliant people. Even an American or two, like the subjects of our next 2 vignettes, Rebecca Gratz and Emma Lazarus. For some of you, the name Rebecca Gratz may be newly familiar because you're taking the class on the American Jewish experience with me. So you know that it took some time before we had a critical mass of a truly sustainable community at the time this woman lived, during the early years of the American Republic, when Jewish immigration was just beginning and assimilation felt inevitable. Well, this was the reality in which Rebecca Gratz was born in 1781 in Philadelphia. Now, she came from a wealthy and socially successful family, and in no small part, also due to her own intellect and her emotional intelligence, this allowed her to become deeply engaged in the intellectual and literary circles of her time. This meant she could freely move between Jewish and non-Jewish worlds and both simultaneously. But she always remained steadfast, even in the tiniest of Jewish communities, to her Jewish identity. Her admirers were many, including one Washington Irving, a man so impressed by her character and intellect that he wrote of her to his British friend, the writer Sir Walter Scott, who modeled the character of the Jewish heroine in the book Ivanhoe for her and named Rebecca after her. She was, if not the first, one of the very first noble Jewish figures of non-Jewish literature. Gratz could have easily assimilated. Most of her peers were doing so at the time. Instead, she dedicated herself to making America an attractive place to live as a Jew, to hopefully bring more Jews over as a result. She famously pioneered Jewish education. She invented the idea of the supplemental Jewish school, the Sunday school. She founded the very first one. And she was instrumental in founding also what would one day, today, become the vast network of American Jewish charitable institutions, for both Jews and non-Jews that we enjoy. Rebecca Gratz saw no contradiction between being a sophisticated American woman of her time and a proud Jew, as she modeled positive Jewish engagement in her nation, proving to our tiny minority and to those Jews who were living across the Atlantic, who were beginning to think about joining us, that in America one could be both deeply Jewish and fully part of this American adventure. Rebecca Gratz reminds us that Jewish pride is about carving out space for Jewish identity in a society that often encourages us to simply blend in, to disappear. It is about contributing to the world without losing ourselves. Emma Lazarus, the other woman I mentioned, was another outstanding American. She was born a bit later in 1849. Most of us, of course, know her for her famous poem, The Great Colossus, written on the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be breathe free. What many forget is that Emma wrote this as a Jew, at a time when Jews were fleeing pogroms in Eastern Europe. She was not one of those fleeing. She was of the earlier generations, those we're studying about in our class now. But she was a fierce advocate for these Jewish refugees, even as she took up that fight for refugees arriving at other shores from other places, non-Jews. This universalism was not an erasure of her Jewish identity. It was an extension of it. It did not detract one iota from her commitment to her own people. Lately, we've been hearing more about something else she wrote. Until we are all free, we are none of us free. Now, this is being used as a cry for collective liberation, and I must say, sometimes at the expense of Jewish safety. But it was actually written to chastise American Jews for not doing enough for their persecuted brethren. She wrote a whole letter to the Jewish leadership about it, and you know what? It worked. It worked, as they began to take more responsibility and ultimately established organizations like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society to help incoming Jews. Recognizing our responsibilities to our own people, she believed, was the best way for Jews and all oppressed people to find dignity and freedom. Emma Lazarus reminds us that Jewish pride is about fighting for one's own people, even as we remain aware of the importance of seeing the humanity in others. This brings me to two last short stories. Undoubtedly, these two on the lower right, I hope, are known to all of you. Elie Wiesel's life was a defiant testament to Jewish pride in the face of unspeakable horror. Born in Sighet, Romania in 1928, he survived Auschwitz, losing his mother, father, and younger sister. For 10 years after, he could not bring himself to write a word about the Holocaust, believing that words could never do justice to what had happened, but yet he finally did. And he published his groundbreaking book, Night, in 1956. Throughout this book, he helped to ensure that Jewish suffering would never be erased, never be whitewashed. At least that was his hope. He refused to let the world turn Jewish trauma into silence. Elie Wiesel went on to use his voice to demand memory and justice for Jews, and yes, for all oppressed people. But he never let his Jewish identity be erased in the process. When he received the Nobel Prize in 1986, he stood as a Jew, and he said so unequivocally. His activism was rooted in Jewish memory, in Jewish survival, and in Jewish moral clarity. Elie Wiesel reminds us that Jewish pride is about refusing to let history erase us. It is about standing as witnesses to truth, even when the world wants us to be silent. And finally, I arrive at one of my own personal heroes, and he's the only one among those who I have chosen who is still alive, and one whom I had an opportunity to meet. For me, few have embodied Jewish pride in modern times, particularly in the face of oppression, quite like Natan Sharansky. As a Soviet Jew, he fought for the right to emigrate to Israel, for which he endured years in the Gulag, refusing to renounce his Zionism, cornerstone of his Jewish identity. When I was a rabbinical student, I worked at the University of Cincinnati's Hillel. That's how I got my start in Hillel. I was an intern there. And I was privileged at that time to work under the tutelage of a longtime leader of the student struggle for Soviet Jewry, a man named Rabbi Abby Ingber. Many of you were involved in that struggle as well. We all remember the days of twinning our bar mitzvahs and so forth. Sharansky's release was among the first steps of victory that we would taste before we would soon celebrate with the freedom of thousands of Soviet Jews. And as it happened, because of the work of the man I worked for, Rabbi Ingber, and the fact that this chapter of the student struggle for Soviet Jewry was located in our Hillel, the very first stop he made after being released from the Soviet Union was the United States. First to New York, of course you have to go to New York, but nobody said you had to go second to Cincinnati. And he did. And he came to my Hillel. And I will never forget, and I still tear up when I think about it, how when he walked in, we all stood up to sing the movement anthem. Some of you may know this song, "We Are Leaving Mother Russia." It remains one of the proudest moments of my Jewish life, a touchstone for me in what Jewish pride can mean. Natan Sharansky reminds us that Jewish pride is about refusing to let the world tell us who we can and cannot be, what we do and do not believe. Each of these Jewish heroes is celebrated for living in the world. None were monastics or pietists of that sense, but they lived as engaged, thinking, active Jews in their time. A reminder to us that Jewish pride need not be about isolating oneself. It's also not about exclusivity. It's about self-respect and dignity. It is about refusing to disappear or feeling the need to apologize for existing. So this Purim, let us take some inspiration from Esther and from all of these figures in remembering that we are here. We absolutely matter. A people of 15.8 million in a world of 4 billion plus. And we are never to be silent or ashamed of who we are. Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and happy Purim! Happy Purim. All right. I hope that you will all be here next week after how long is the Purim spiel, Arthur, my Purim spiel? It's about 40 minutes. So after that's done, no, it's about 4 minutes, actually. After that's done, we're gonna sing, we're gonna eat, we're gonna drink, those of you who are not driving. Starts at 6:30. It's not a service. There's no service. There's only fun. And we're gonna play pub trivia. So who's good at trivia here? All right, so you're the winner already. We'll play pub trivia. It won't be a late evening, but it'll be a fun evening. And we're going to conclude now. It's still freezing in here, isn't it? No? All right, well, you always say that. We're going to conclude with this beautiful song by Debbie Friedman. We haven't sung it in a while.
Did you say it's freezing?
I'm cold.
I've never heard that from you before.
I'm cold up here, yeah.
All the time I've known you.
I don't think the heat's on at all. I don't think the heat's on. All right, play the piano. That'll warm us up.
Okay.
You do that really well.
May we know peace as we go on our way. May we be guided by love. May we be blessed with health and joy. This be our blessing. Shalom. 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 May this be our blessing. Shalom. 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 May this be our blessing. Shalom. May we be sheltered by the wings of peace. May we abide in safety and in love. May grace and compassion compassion find their way to everyone. May this be our blessing. Shalom. 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 May this be our blessing. Shalom. 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 May this be our blessing. Shalom.
Thank you so much to Joseph for the beautiful music, David for the streaming, Arthur for the computer effects, and Carol Goldsmith who does our oneg every week. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.